Welcome to Manifest It Like a Woman, where we talk about wisdom, wildness, becoming, a podcast for the woman unfolding. My name is Amber Turner, and I am your host. And in this podcast, we explore the sacred and sometimes messy intersection of womanhood and feminine spirituality. Through poetic musings, honest reflections, and a wild woman wisdom, we unravel the beauty of becoming, not as performance, but as birthright. This is a love story between you and the woman you're becoming. Let's get into the episode. Welcome to Manifest It Like a Woman. I am your host, Amber Turner, and today we are talking about the X chromosome. Something juicy, something fascinating that I find very fascinating. And let's call today's episode Awakening the Sleeping X, the Snow White Code. So, hey guys, welcome to the show. I am really excited, but before we get into the show, the topic for today's show, I have to share with you guys that the House of Her will be launching November 11th, and this is a living library for Manifested Like a Woman. These are my meditations. These are just a little peek inside. We just created the Healing Goddess Protocol, which is about getting into your healing. So we talk about health things, some wellness things, and we also have recipes, all sorts of delicious things in this living library. And so it's audios and mainly meditations. I use my signature method, the hypnotic and melodic method, when it comes to my meditations. And this is a very powerful method because we integrate breathing techniques along with affirmations and along with melody and imagery to really make it rich and alive. So it's very potent, I feel. So I'm really, really excited about that. And we have your personal guru.ai, which is our AI tool where reflection becomes revelation. And so we have a wait list coming for that. That's going to be our new app when it comes to meeting yourself and learning about yourself, getting deeper insights about yourself. Because here's the thing, you don't need another coach to affirm you, motivate you. You need to learn about yourself. And this is what I talk about all the time when it comes to Manifest It Like a Woman. We are coming home to ourselves. We are understanding ourselves. We are deeply connecting with ourselves. And so that is what your personal guru.ai is all about. It is going to be an app for iOS and Android. And so if you want to get on the wait list for that, go to yourpersonalguru.ai. And so just thinking about it too, we also have programs in the House of Her that are similar to that you can leverage and use in the House of Her as well. We have some immersive retreats in there, and we have a lot of other good things in that living library. So that launches 11/11. So today I want to talk about the X chromosome. So I read a fascinating book called Your Supernatural Powers or something like that. I'm going to have to get the name of the book, but she's actually going to be on my channel on YouTube, or she's actually going to be on this show eventually. We're shooting for in December, but we'll see. And she talks about tapping into your supernatural power via the X chromosome. And that's actually something that I kind of tapped into as well. I talk a lot about being an X-Men powers. And I always just find that fascinating because if you look at some of those powers that they have, it is like psychic abilities, telepathy, telekinesis, Magneto. He can manipulate the magnetic field. And when it comes to women, we're often Magneto, We are very fluid. We change up our identities. And if you follow me, you know, I definitely do that. The shape shifting, you know, we're very intuitive. We can tap into the field and all sorts of things. And so that you can see those powers kind of manifest in those superheroes, right? And they're called X-Men. And I always thought, why are they called X-Men? I mean, eventually I tapped into that in meditation, is that they're connecting to the X chromosome. And it's interesting that that book that I read, which is really, really fascinating, and it ties it into the mitochondrial DNA, and which I also talk about in Manifest It Like a Woman. And so there's all of these symbols and correlations to the X chromosome. And I was listening to I was watching a YouTube video. I was watching a YouTube video on the patriarchy, which I often do, the dismantling of the patriarchy. She was talking about something in the video, which I'm going to share in this essay that I'm going to share in this episode. And I just found it fascinating that we sometimes can be at our own detriment. And, you know, this whole feminine energy thing that we talk about, and I like to talk about all the time, has its place. And it also has its distortion. And I think for a lot of us, especially when we get into it, we talk about feminine energy and we get into this more performative aspect of feminine energy. And I know I did. I mean, if you go back on my channel, you can definitely tell that I did. But also on the flip side, we can go way too far and actually strip the matriarchy and feminine energy of its true essence of reciprocity, of softness, as ease, as flow, as harmony, as all of it. Because I wrote in my book, Manifest It Like a Woman, that in a beginning, she said, "Let there be light." And she gave from her infinite being a portion of herself, she extended outward for things to be seen, the light, which I say is 5%, because when we talk about 5% being the conscious mind and 95% being the subconscious mind, she gave 5% of herself and a portion of herself so things could be seen, so she could know herself, remember herself, to know herself. And then the distortion happened because she started thinking that the reflection, that 5%, that reflection was truth. And so that's why I say in the book, Manifest It Like a Woman, center yourself and your pleasure, truth. Rest in truth. Rest in peace. Rest in heaven. Right? So it is this idea that we don't want to move away from truth, ease, flow, softness, fertility, richness, abundance. We don't want to move away from that. You know, that's it. And so it's this fine line of what is feminine energy? What is femininity? What is truth? You know, oftentimes in this realm, especially in the feminism realm, we always this thing where people talk about, I don't believe in fairy tales and fairy tales aren't real and blah, blah, blah. I don't know about you, but I believe in happily ever after. Like, I don't think, you know, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater type of thing where it's like you have to, anything that might be feminine, soft, happily ever after, whatever it is, you kind of just like, you move as far away from it as possible to take down the patriarchy. Now, I understand the patriarchy, and that is a distortion of us not remembering who we are and how powerful we are. That's it. The power is not out there. It is in here. It is you. And so the distortion becomes we have to fight. We have to become the opposite of what is truth. And then we have to continue to look outside of ourselves versus coming back to ourselves and remembering, oh, I am that. I am that. Okay. I wanted to share that. I wanted to preface this essay with that because I feel like it's really important. We sometimes miss the mark when it comes to playing this game, or we miss the mark sometimes when it comes to remembering who we are. And it is this beautiful, decadent, rich softness, reciprocity, and coming back to ourselves. So I needed to share that before I read this essay to you and share it with you because it's going to make sense. Okay, here we go. Awakening the Sleeping X, the Snow White Code. There's a line in Anthony David's song Words that always touches something deep in me. Fairy tales do exist if you believe. Every time I hear it, something inside me hums in agreement. I've always believed in fairy tales, not as glittery promises of rescue, but as ancient maps of remembrance. Beneath the talking mirrors, poisoned apples, and enchanted sleeps, there's a wisdom we often overlook. These stories aren't telling us to wait for magic. They're reminding us that we are the magic. The Forgotten Code. Take Snow White. Most people remember the apple, the dwarves, and the prince's kiss. What we don't often explore is what those symbols actually mean. For me, Snow White represents the sleeping feminine principle, the part of us that has fallen into forgetfulness. She lies in a crystal coffin, visible, preserved, but still. She's the dormant X chromosome of our collective psyche, the feminine essence that has been silenced but not destroyed. The prince is not a man on a horse. He is consciousness itself, the inner masculine energy that returns to awaken her. When he leans in, it's not a rescue. It's a reunion. It's the moment our awareness meets our essence. The two currents, masculine and feminine, merge into wholeness again. The trigger and the truth. Recently, I was watching a YouTube video about the heroine's journey. The creator was discussing the writer who coined the term after reading Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces. She shared a story about Campbell's response when asked why there wasn't a heroine's journey. His reply was, because there's nowhere for her to go. For the woman in the video, that line was frustrating. She said she felt immediate outrage, like so many women might, assuming it's another example of patriarchy minimizing the feminine experience. But when I heard it, I didn't feel that flare. Instead, something in me softened. I understood exactly what he meant. When Campbell said there's nowhere for her to go, I don't believe he meant that women have no journey or depth. I believe he meant she's already home. The feminine doesn't travel in straight lines or chase dragons. Her path is circular, cellular, magnetic. She doesn't need to find herself. She is the field in which all things are found. Her work is remembrance. Her journey is awakening. The rage and the remembrance. Now, let me be clear. I absolutely support the dismantling of patriarchal systems that have distorted power for centuries. But I've also seen how easily righteous anger can transform into another form of war, just in a different costume. Anger can be a doorway to awakening, but if we live there too long, it blinds us to the truth we came to remember. It's one thing to burn the old structure. It's another to build from love instead of rage. True feminine reclamation isn't about conquering or overthrowing. It's about returning to center, returning to truth, returning to the part of ourselves that was never asleep, only dreaming. The science of the spell. Even on a biological level, the story mirrors truth. The X chromosome is the original template of human life, the archive of creation itself. The Y chromosome came later, a specialization. The feminine blueprint came first, and half of it remains asleep through a process scientists literally call X inactivation. Snow White's slumber is the cell's silence. The prince's kiss is the spark of awareness reawakening the dormant code. What fairy tales call magic, biology calls energy coherence. When we awaken the sleeping X, we're not stepping into fantasy. We're allowing consciousness and energy, spirit and body, masculine and feminine, to finally meet again. Believing in fairy tales. So yes, I believe in fairy tales. Not because I'm naive, but because I understand the language. Fairy tales are the ancient tongue of the soul, telling us what the mind forgot, that love resurrects, that awareness heals, that wholeness is our birthright. Snow White isn't a girl waiting for a prince. She's the divine feminine within us all, waiting for consciousness to remember her. When we believe in fairy tales, we're not escaping reality. We're restoring it. We're remembering that magic was never gone. It was simply sleeping. To awaken the sleeping X is to remember that we were never powerless, only dreaming. So I wanted to share that. I think that believing in fairy tales is a beautiful thing. And whenever I hear that line in Anthony David's song, beautifully written song, something inside me moves. I'm touched by that. You know, I've always been fascinated with X-Men and, you know, the different powers in which they share with us, levitating and manipulation of weather and magnetic fields and these things. And perhaps that is something that you can tap into. You just have to remember. You just have to come back home. So that's all for this show. I really wanted to share that, the sleeping X. It's time to wake up. Okay. The House of Her launches 11/11. Also, check out yourpersonalguru.ai. If you're interested in that app, you can just go and sign up for the waiting list. I will check you guys in the next episode. Peace.